Okay, I think we are live, which is good. So, welcome to another Monday. The date today, what is the date today? The 1st of December, 2025. So, the year just seems to be running away with us all, I think, really. Certainly from our perspective, every week seems to fly by faster than the last week, generally. So, let's just get the comments open so that we can answer any questions, find out who's on the call as people join, and obviously where they're from, which of course is the interesting part, really. So this week we have on the Chen Chat, we're going to talk about a couple of cards that Jayne put out on Friday. So that was Believe in the Path, you're being led down, so it was a path-based card, and then a boundaries card, your boundaries are your power. So we're just going to give a few people a few moments to log in. So basically on the Feed It Friday, Jayne tends to put a couple of oracle cards out. Going to say hi to Vanessa. Hi, Vanessa. Thanks for joining. Seems like such a long time ago since we saw you, as of probably 2 days or something. So we basically had our kind of like our works. Well, I say our work. We had our works kind of Christmas party. Basically, myself, Jayne, Vanessa, Ruth, Ollie. There's website stuff. Briders, TikTok, and that was some fun, which was good. So we had a few things to talk about. Lots of laughs, which is always good. Try and keep the vibe high. So it's quite nice to have a kind of early Christmas party, really, from that perspective. Jayne downstairs is saying the sound is fine, which is good. It was good to get a sound check in whilst we're talking away. So yeah, we've had quite a busy week. Lots of things going on. Again, things to arrange. And I guess the same for everyone, really, as it comes to this time of the year. You start to get really busy. Christmas starts to approach, so people are thinking about family time. Obviously, last week in the States, we had Thanksgiving, which is a big event, effectively, for you guys. So we're kind of aware how that kind of impacts the things that you do and the attention side for you guys. So we're kind of aware how that impacts the things that you do, which is good. Okay, I'm just turning that off. Phone repeated on me. So yeah, so this week, so we're going to talk about basically two oracle cards. Also, just a quick update. So myself and Jayne have been talking about the things that we do and the way we're doing things. So we're looking to basically amalgamate these Chen Chats with the Chen Q&A that we do, the questions and answers. So if you're not familiar on social media, primarily Facebook, really, or of course email, you can submit questions to Chen. And Jayne picks those up. They get popped into a spreadsheet, effectively. Everything we do is in a spreadsheet somewhere, just about. And then we do a questions and answers with Chen. So Jayne basically talks to Chen, asks him your questions. He then replies, and obviously that goes out as a kind of broadcast. Also goes out as a podcast on the podcast platform, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and various other podcast channels too. So we're looking at bringing those two things together from our perspective, really. So these chats will amalgamate myself, Jayne, and she'll be talking to Chen, and then we'll do the Q&A at the same time. So it kind of seems like a good use of our time. And of course, we're sort of aware of your time too. So people that spend their time coming on these chats, or people that listen to them in catch up, and we know there's a lot of people that do this in catch up, because for many people you're at work whilst we're recording this live in the UK timeline, effectively. So trying to bring two podcasts together into one podcast seems like a good thing to do, really, from our perspective. I'm just going to say hi to Mimi that's joined. Jayne's downstairs, which is good. So that's the kind of way we're looking to move things forward, really. We're trying to amalgamate things that we do and condense things into shorter time periods, because we're aware that everyone has time pressure, as we do, of course, too. And when we're creating content, we're doing podcasts, talking about things, more podcasts equals more time for people to listen to them and find the time to listen to them. So we thought amalgamating some of the things that we do would make it easier for people to assimilate our content in the way that you guys do, basically. Okay, so this week, so two cards went out last week that Jayne popped out on Facebook. So Believe in the Path You're Being Led Down was card number 1. So if you were aligned with that card, we're going to go over that from my perspective. And the second card that was popped out then was Your Boundaries Are Your Power, which also is so I mean, they're two very interesting topics, really. very spiritual. They're sort of aligned with our spiritual path, the way that we think. So from my perspective, believe in the path that you're being led down. So this card kind of speaks really to us, I guess, for the moments in our time that life is sort of nudging us in one direction or another, generally into unfamiliar kind of territory. So we sort of feel guided, but we're not really certain why we feel guided, and we don't really know what we're going into, I think, which is pretty evident, I think, for anyone on a spiritual path. You kind of see doors that open for you, but you don't know where they're going to take you. And sometimes they take us in different directions that we're not really expecting. So it's believing and having trust and faith that as those doors open and that path is being shown to us really from a spiritual perspective, that we just need to follow. And of course, this is how our guides, our spirit guides, communicate with us. If we can't talk to our guides or we can't hear them, which most people can't, to be fair, then the guides are basically using things to lead you into your spiritual path. And that can come through in kind of subtle signs, different synchronicities, intuitive pulls, thoughts, feelings, attention from people around you, of course, as well. So quite often our own spirit guides can use people around us to give us the nudge into a direction that we need to be nudged from their perspective, really. So the next step in our life, really, generally, is kind of revealed when we're ready. And it's not when the mind demands it, I think, is the key thing. So many people say, why can't I talk to my spirit guide like you do? To me, quite often. And I say, well, there's probably different reasons for that. But for me to talk to Chen, that was probably about 3 or 4 years of going to weekly meditation groups before I could actually have a kind of synchronistic sequential chat with him like he was sat in the room. So it took me a long time to clear my field, to get through a lot of the things I've been through in my life, to get to the right vibration, the right space to be able to talk to, listen to, and be guided by Chen, really. So even though there is that guidance happening and we are being pushed down that path, it can take some time to go down that path. So I think certainly these days with social media and the way that we all live our lives in this very fast paced space, everyone wants to do everything in 5 minutes. And we kind of forget that going back in time, spiritual path is a slow path to learn on. Certainly for mediums, if you want to be a medium and you want to speak to your guides and do the things that we see people doing, to do psychic surgery, healing, those sorts of things, generally for most people, that isn't going to happen in 5 minutes. And it's probably going to take a couple of years. And I think for most of the mediums that I know that are professional, so people that do this for a job, when you talk to them, most of them will tell you it's kind of a 2 or 3 year path, really, before you get to the point of having the confidence to know the guide that you're talking to feel confident in the conversation that you have with the guide, for you to trust them and have that kind of unequivocal trust in the things that they say and places they lead you. Whereas lots of people seem to want to be mediumistic, speaking to their spirit guides in, a weekend course, which is probably never going to happen in reality. And certainly for someone to be credible and good at the work that they do from a mediumistic perspective, I can't imagine that you could possibly learn to do that, in 5 minutes, really. So I think believing in the path, take your time. And again, Chen used to say to me, because I used to be quite, I wanted things to happen faster than they did. And Chen used to find it, he always used to say to me, take your time, enjoy the path. It's not the destination. It's the journey that you're supposed to be interested in. It's the journey that we're supposed to enjoy. We're supposed to look back and remember when we couldn't do things and we spent time going to groups and learning and being with people that we trusted and people we liked, having friends on the spiritual path. These are all the things that are part of our journey. It isn't really the destination. It's the path that we have to enjoy and the path that we need to allow ourselves time to walk down and to meet the people we do. And I've been quite fortunate in my path, really. Obviously, we've met some amazing people. Every time we do courses, we meet great people. And generally, I'd say 99% of the people that we come in contact with on the spiritual path are kind of fantastic people that we align with and we love to connect with and work with. There's always a few that are probably not that way. But then, like everything, there's always going to be 9/10 of the audience is fantastic. 1/10 maybe not so much, really. But again, it's all about our path, effectively. And we need to sort of trust in the spiritual technology, allowing the higher guidance to work through us, rather than being resistant to things that come to us. And again, it's trying to turn away from being kind of ego-led with our desires to soul-led, spirit-led, allow the spirit guides to kind of lead us, let them steer us in the way that they need to do that, in the way that we need to go. And of course, the spirit guide generally knows more about our path and where we're going than we do. So working with the guides, allowing those doors to open. Sometimes if things feel uncomfortable, that's when we learn, that's when we grow. It's probably the best things to do, really. And again, one of the things that I kind of live by to a certain degree is if everything is comfortable and easy, then it's probably too easy, really. And you're probably not learning that much. Things should be uncomfortable. Things should be new. Things should be a bit difficult, because that's how we grow. And when we do the same thing and we kind of sit inside our kind of comfort zone, then are we really pushing ourselves? Are we really learning? Probably not. Because again, things should be slightly uncomfortable. And that is the spiritual path, really. So I'm just going to say hi to Kat, who's here, Ashley and Agata. Good to have you folks on. If you've got any questions about the conversation, or actually you want to give your kind of opinions of your path, things that you found uncomfortable, things that you found difficult, or things that you've really enjoyed about the way your guides have tested you or pushed you, then pop them in the chat. It's good for other people to read. It's good for other people to see your comments, your life. We're all interested in each other. We all learn from each other. So it's not just about my conversation really on here. It's about kind of bringing this into the community and us talking together about things that we've found challenging, things that we found to be good, and how you kind of perceive that for yourself, really. So I think the card, Believe in the Path, is that really for me. It's basically a reminder that we're being guided every day by our spirit guides, and they're trying their best to kind of push us along this spiritual journey, really, that can be quite hard, of course, at times. So moving on to the second card. So the second card that Jayne posted was called Your Boundaries Are Your Power. So boundaries is a very good conversation. It's an interesting conversation. It's one that we need to be thinking about as synchronicity would do from a path card, really, I think. So it's all about protecting our energy for me. So when we talk about boundaries from people around us. So we all have this kind of conscious awareness that we've got locked into ourselves. We've all been through different experiences in life. Lots of us have been through traumas, pain, all sorts of things. So we've all got kind of triggers basically baked into our kind of conscious pie, and we need to protect ourselves from other people. And the way that we do that is we decide what our boundaries are. So when we're talking to people, family, friends, work colleagues, where are those boundaries for you? Where do you put the wall up? If someone speaks to you in a certain way and it doesn't feel particularly replicating of how you would like to be spoken to, do you say, can I just stop you there? You know, I prefer if you said this, or prefer if you asked me that. So again, how do we kind of hold our boundaries? How do we talk about our boundaries? Boundaries can be quite difficult because most people don't really invoke their boundaries until they get triggered. And then you find you're having an argument with someone, or someone's annoyed about something you've said or something you've done, but there hasn't been that red light flashing, really, because we've stepped onto their landmine over the top of what should have been a boundary. So if we know where their boundaries are, we would respect their boundaries. We wouldn't be triggering them particularly. And if we look at our relationships we have with our wives, husbands, families, friends, children, everyone has to have a boundary, because behind the boundary is a trigger. And if we're triggering each other continually, it means that we're not really maintaining, I guess, our own boundary. So it kind of comes into our own responsibility, so that people know where they can, things they can do, things they can say, things that you're happy with, also things you're not happy with. So again, how do you kind of protect your boundaries? Do you invoke your boundaries, or do people walk all over you? I think when we're younger, we tried to people please. I would say for most people, certainly most spiritual people are probably falling into the people pleasing space. And then as you get older, you start to realize that people pleasing doesn't really work, and you need to maintain boundaries. So really, for me, boundaries is kind of sensitive and intuitive people struggle with the concept of boundaries. And how does that kind of drain our spiritual clarity, I guess? So boundaries are the anchor, I think, for sovereignty, really, and intuition and emotional stability. From my perspective, if we're maintaining our boundaries, we're holding our sovereignty, we kind of use that intuitively, And that gives us the emotional stability that we need to kind of interact with our family, friends, work colleagues, people that we come into contact with on a daily basis. If we don't have sovereignty, then we have other energies controlling our feelings, manipulating our emotional state. And of course, that's not a great place to be at all, really. And I think there's probably subtle ways that our energy kind of gets leaked when we think about how do we maintain our boundaries, how do we protect our energy, do we people please, do we overgive to people around us? Most of us probably do in some way or another. Are we absorbing other people's energies and allowing sort of subtle disrespect to ourselves in a way that we don't think about it or don't see it? So again, how do you manage your boundaries, or do you even think about your boundaries? Do you have any boundaries? Or do you have boundaries with some of your close family and friends, and then different boundaries for other people in your outer circle? So I like to think of the kind of circle of trust model where we've got this very small circle. There's a few people inside the middle who are the people that are closest to us, generally people we're in relationships with, wives, husbands, that kind of thing, family, friends. And then we've got a circle of trust that gets bigger to the kind of outer lying people that we work with, people we come into contact with, people that we are in clubs with, and people that we do things with. But they're in that kind of second group of people, really, in that outer circle of trust, and we have different boundaries for those people because we don't spend as much time with them. They're not inside our kind of very tight circle, and therefore they're not able to absorb our energy or kind of manipulate us in the same way that the people that are in that close group do effectively. So boundaries are the filter, it's the fence. How do we keep people back? And again, we nourish the things that we enjoy, the things that we like, and we release what kind of diminishes us and takes from us. So boundaries are really, really important thing to do. And I think, when we say no to people, people don't like the word no, but it's not really rejection. It's more alignment. We're not aligned with them, the way they think, the things they do. So again, it's that kind of concept that we need to find a pleasant way to say no to someone, to respect our own self, our own sovereignty, respect our own boundary, and align ourselves with who we want to be, the way we want to be spoken to, the way that we speak to other people. All of it is a fence, a boundary. So we need to kind of consider that, I think, when we look at the second card, which is sort of boundaries, and that becomes our power. When we maintain our fence, when we maintain our boundary, that becomes power to us spiritually because we're stepping into our sovereignty and we're declaring our sovereignty to the universal forces, the universal energies. This is what I will do. This is what I won't do. This is who I am. This is who I'm not. So just think about our boundaries for a few minutes. And of course, the guides support us when we reinforce our limits. Our spirit guides stand behind us and help to reinforce those limits. But if we don't put limits and fences in place, then people just career over the top, and we find that we're people pleasing and we live a life of frustration, annoyance. All of the negative energies start to come in because people are basically psychically vampiring our time, our emotions, our energy, because we don't put boundaries in place. So it should be the simplest thing to do. But I think for most people, it's probably the hardest thing to do, really. So that card, your boundaries are our power, reminds us that we cannot really follow a guided path if we're drained, overwhelmed, and basically entangled in other people. So boundaries have to be the conversation, really. And Kat's just put something in the chat. So I actually hadn't experienced this AM here in the US. I had some lab work done, and the phlebotomist saw my raven tattoo while searching for a vein. My paperwork had KA printed on it. So I joked, yes, my name is KK. But it led to a conversation about a lady who was visited by a crow right after her mother passed, and that was the reason for my tattoo. So I figured we were meant to meet, and possibly it was I who was delivering a message from spirit to her. What a great way to see it, Kat, actually. Such a good way to explain things, really. So that's really cool. Thanks for popping that in the chat. Hi to Esty, who's just joined as well. Good to have you here. So it's basically covering the two cards that we popped on social media for anyone that's just joined, which was a your boundaries are your power card, and believe in your path, or the spiritual path you're being led down. So we're kind of covering those two conversations. So I think I've covered it from my perspective, really. Just get Chen in to talk about the path and boundaries, see what he has to say. And let me just grab my phone, set the obligatory timer. Chen loves to be on the clock. Not really. Okay, so timer. Cool. Okay, so that's running. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Chen, and I'll catch you guys in a while. Good day to you all. It's my pleasure again to be able to narrate this particular conversation to you and, of course, with you. So firstly, thank you very much for allowing us to speak to you, to have this conversation that young Andrew has started so well and covered in such good depth. So really, young Jayne is very good at actually organising the things that we're talking about. She's very good at understanding what's of interest to people, to yourselves, people on a spiritual path. And anyone that's on a spiritual path, which of course is everyone that lives, incarnate on this planet, every human being that has a spirit is on a spiritual path. Whether they know that or not, of course, is a completely different conversation. But effectively, everyone is spirit incarnated into a physical, human, chemical and biological body, and therefore they're on a spiritual path. So the spiritual path is obviously the first card that we're talking about. And that spiritual path, we must remember, is a path that we selected for ourselves. So before you enter into a human life, you sit down at a table, effectively, almost as a council. You select your spirit guides, people that have been around you from lifetime to lifetime. So a grandfather, maybe in a previous life, could be your spirit guide in this life. Or you could have selected a spirit guide that is non-human and what you would call an extraterrestrial guide, because they come with different qualities. If the core part of your energy is not really human, from a different star system or galaxy, let's say the Pleiadians or Aryan or the many other types of being you could be, maybe your spirit guide is a colleague, a family member from these different races, from these different places. So you're selecting your spirit guides. You then basically look at your path. This is when I will be born. I will come in, I will select the astrology of my birth date. So I will basically arrive as an incarnate human being at this exact time to this exact astrology. And these spirit guides that I'm selecting and picking will be walking the path with me, holding my hand in the unseen frequencies, in a different vibration. We all know that the physical spectrum that we see is very, very small. And we know that our spirit guides vibrate and exist in a different frequency. We don't see them with our eyes, but we know they're there. They're holding our hand. They're walking with us. We walk with you every moment of every day. We're with you when you sleep. We're with you when you wake. We're continually looking at the map of your life, the path that you chose yourself. You would have chosen the key points in that path: to have children if you're a female, to get married, to get divorced, to be involved in an accident. Whatever happens in your life, that the key qualities or experiences, you pre-chose those. Other things can happen by chance. Things can happen by coincidence, but nothing really is coincidental because the path is chosen by you. So you're walking your path. Our job as your spirit guides is to direct you and guide you onto and try to keep you on the path that you yourself chose. Now, of course, you can imagine this is quite difficult. Think of children running around a school play yard. They run in all directions, almost like they have a will of their own. They see different things, they get distracted by different things. They're playing with one friend, then they run off and play with another friend, and then they pick up a football or something and go and play with a football and chase it around aimlessly. Very difficult to guide, and this is what it's like for us as your spirit guides to keep you on your spiritual path. There are so many distractions on planet Earth. so many rabbit holes, of course, we say, that appear that you can disappear down and not really come back from sometimes. So planet Earth is a very interesting training environment for a spiritual entity to be incarnated, and quite a difficult job for a spirit guide to keep the person they're working with on their spiritual path. And to do this, of course, we use different ways. We can use other people to give you ideas, to try to push you or guide you along onto your path, to have you turn up at the right place at the right time, to meet the right person in your life that will take you onto your path and keep you there. Someone that you may meet in a coffee shop that talks about a new hobby, going to the gym, doing yoga. We know that if you go to yoga, you then meet someone else. That person may give you the right wording or might have the right interest to lead you into the right place, to get you to where we want you to be. But we have to use lots of different connections to get you into the right places. So you can imagine, from a spirit guide's perspective, this is a job, of course, in itself, to try to guide you along the spiritual path, meeting the right people at the right time, in the right circumstances, to keep walking you forward so that the path is opening continually, the doors are opening continually. Now, how do you know if you're following your path? Well, it should be very simple, really, because if everything just seems to happen without you putting too much effort in, then you're probably on your spiritual path. If you're pushing hard and every turn seems to be a roadblock, a blockage of some description, then you're probably not on your path, because your path is opening as it needs to open and your guides are in front opening the doors. The person on their path will find that they just have inspired thought, they have inspired ideas, everything they turn their hand to just seems to work, seems to open. But to stay on your path, of course, you must start to learn to control your own emotional state, your mental state. And importantly, you must walk a sovereign path. Because, of course, if you have other energies and manipulating your thought process, your emotions, your feelings, your circumstances, then you do not have sovereignty. And of course, other energies will push you off of your path. And then you find these blockages start to appear, where you end up meeting the wrong people, the wrong relationships, narcissistic control, manipulation in different ways. So if you find yourself in manipulative, narcissistic situations, you've probably been guided off of your path at some point by someone probably quite close to you in your life. And of course, it's identifying who around you is not working really for your highest good. It's taking you away from your path. And if you all just spend a moment to think about your peer group, your friends, your family, the people very close to you, who aligns with you energetically? Who do you feel drawn to? Who understands you when you speak? Who understands the conversation that you have? And who doesn't understand those things? Who always has a different idea? Who always guides you in the wrong way, causing problems, issues, negative experiences? Who is that person in your life? Because they're the person that you need to be moving out of your path, because they're the ones that are taking you off of your path, whilst your guides are trying to move you into the right space with the right teachings, the right understanding, and the right experiences. So if we spend a moment just to think about who is in our life, and for those of you that do this particular podcast, of course, in catch-up mode, we can stop and we can pause the recording and we can write down a list. The top 10 people in your life today, and we tick, are they positive or are they negative? And then we look at the ones that we've ticked and the ones that we've crossed. And the ones that we've crossed, we know are negative, they're driving us or taking us off of our path. Then we can look at, why is that? What are they doing that's causing us issues, problems, negativity? So then we start to think about who we spend our time with. So we need to spend more time with the positive people who are aligned with our path, people going in the same direction as us. These are the people we need to spend our time with. People taking us off of our path are people that we need to put in the other box, people that we spend less time with. So we spend less time being diverted away from our goals, away from our spiritual experiences and path, and more time aligning with the good people, the positive people in our life that are there to guide us, to nourish us, to nurture us, and are walking the same path as we are. So this should be quite a simple exercise for you to do. So the next card that young Jayne picked, of course, is boundaries. And boundaries, again, is something we should be teaching our children. Children should learn as they're growing up. These are expectations, things you are expected to do. You're expected to speak to people politely. You're expected to speak your truth. You're expected to speak with integrity. You're expected to follow a certain set of rules in our social society and culture that is positive. We treat each other with love and respect. And if children were taught some of these core values as they grow up, then of course at adulthood they would be speaking their truth. They would be maintaining their boundaries, because speaking your truth intricately links to boundaries. How can you have boundaries if you do not speak your truth? If people say things to you don't like, that trigger you, that make you feel emotional, upset, negative, angry, push you into rage, these are negative emotions and experiences, and they're there because you haven't maintained your boundaries. So again, let's think about our life for a few moments. Again, a list of paper, top 10 people. Again, who in that top 10 list causes us pain and anguish, negative emotional experiences, time and time again? Then we think about who gives us a positive experience. Who in our list do we maintain boundaries with, and they work with us? They respect our integrity. They inspect our truth. They allow us to be the person that we are. They're positive people, and we have a positive experience with them. So we need to align again the people we mix with on a daily basis into positive people that are respecting our boundary and our spoken word, and negative people that do not respect our boundaries, do not respect our integrity, that overstep our boundaries and try to manipulate and control us in different ways. So when we have these two lists, we do the same thing. We spend more time with the positive people that have nurtured our emotional connection with them, that understand where our boundaries are, and they respect our boundaries. And the people that do not respect our boundaries, that come clambering over the top of our boundaries, that cause us trauma, pain, negative emotion, upset on a daily basis, these will be people that need to learn where our boundaries are. So we have to start to reinforce our boundary with those people. And those people will be the closest people in your circle. This could be your mother, your father, your children, your husband, your wife. These will be people very, very close to you that have learnt to control you energetically because they do not respect your boundaries, and therefore you have not reinforced your boundaries. So the responsibility sits on your shoulders, not theirs, because if you don't reinforce your boundaries, how can you expect people around you to align with any boundaries you have? Because you do not appear to protect them. And this, of course, is how things work in the outer culture. Think about how countries do not go to war with each other generally because they respect each other's boundary. Countries are geographical denominations of space, and generally, for most countries in the world, peace is kept because each country respects the other's boundary. If they do not respect the other's boundary, they encroach over the boundaries, and then we have wars because boundaries are not being aligned and protected. So the way that countries work should be the same way that you consider yourself. You have to be responsible for your own boundaries. And of course, those boundaries can change. Some people don't need to understand where your boundaries are in the same way that other people do. So for more dominant personalities, maybe more narcissistic people, the boundaries has to be stronger. That fence has to be higher, has to be reinforced continually. For a different person, you may be able to assert a boundary. They listen, they remember. You don't need to remind them ever again. So again, the boundary has to be something that can be changed by you, but it has to be reinforced by you. And if you do not reinforce the boundary, then people will encroach. They will step over. So this should be a very simple part of the upbringing and the way that you teach your children. For those of you that have children that are on their spiritual path, that are involved with spiritual parents, teaching them about their boundaries is probably the best thing that you can do for their further happiness. Because if they can control their boundary, they can control the people in their life and around them, and this will put them in a very good place to maintain their sovereignty, to maintain their energy, and for them to speak their truth with integrity. And this, of course, those two things are core values. They're core spiritual teachings, core values. Speaking your truth with integrity. Now think about people in your circle. How many people look you in the eye and speak their truth? They tell you they don't like your haircut. They tell you they don't like your shoes or your dress sense or your clothing. How many people do that? Probably zero. Most people tell you that everything's wonderful, but they secretly think the opposite. Well, there's no truth and integrity in that person's energetic field, because effectively everything is vibration, as we know. So when you say what you truly believe, you're speaking your truth with integrity. It's not a negative thing to say to someone that what they wear isn't what you would wear, or as long as they're happy wearing those clothes, that's the main thing, because it wouldn't be your choice. You could obviously align the choice of words in a way that you decide to. It doesn't have to be negative, but you are speaking your truth with integrity. And that would be my challenge, really, from this particular podcast this week to you all that listen and those that listen to this in catch-up. Try going for a day speaking your truth. Every single time you speak to someone today, speak your truth with integrity and see how you feel, because you'll notice that you feel a higher vibration, a higher energy when you speak your truth. When you do not hold your boundaries and you do not speak your truth, your vibration drops, because effectively you're talking in a negative way. Your vibration must drop. You're not maintaining your spiritual sovereignty by not speaking what you believe with integrity. So let's try a day. Ask your husband, your wife, your colleagues, your children, people in your circle. Let's try today to speak our truth to each other and do so with honor and integrity. And then let's review at the end of the day how we feel when we've spoken to a shopkeeper, a person on public transport, with truth and integrity. We've told them what a wonderful job they're doing and how without them doing that job, society wouldn't be the same. We think about cleaners, people that clean things, clean toilets, they clean the loos, they clean basins. They have dirty jobs to do. These people have a function and generally at the lowest part of society when viewed by other people. But if they weren't doing their job, people wouldn't use the toilets, people wouldn't go to work. Think about an office block with thousands of people. The cleaner is the most important job in that office block. The director or CEO of the company, no one sees. Nobody knows. They never speak to anyone. They sit at the top, looking out of the glass dome. The cleaner that's in the toilet, 5, 6, 7 times an hour cleaning, has the most important job in that organizational structure, because if they don't do their job, people won't use the toilets. People will go home. So the cleaner has the most ethical, positive job, but is generally seen to be the lowest part of society. And yet the CEO of a company that no one sees, no one speaks to, no one knows what they really do. Why would they be seen to be the highest part of society? Everything is topsy-turvy. Everything is in reverse. The cleaner is probably speaking their truth. The CEO of the company probably isn't speaking their truth, probably doesn't act with integrity, probably doesn't have a huge amount of integrity, more than likely. Not to say, of course, that's the same for all CEOs or company directors, But certainly for big companies, we know that they work in a very corrupt way, and they don't manage their staff particularly well, and they don't pay their staff particularly well, and they don't give their staff particular benefits that they should, most probably. So when we sort of look at jobs and societies, what do we see? Everything is inverted. Those that are at the bottom maybe should be at the top. Those that are at the top maybe should spend a day at the bottom. But of course, this comes back to the core part of this conversation, which is boundaries and the path, the spiritual path. So I think from my perspective, that's probably covered everything that I wanted to cover in this conversation. So we'll bring young Andrew back. And this is my challenge to you all, is to spend a day aligning yourself with your path, noticing the doors that open, speaking your truth, and upholding your boundaries. So with that, I will say good day, and we will look forward to next week's conversation. Goodbye. Okay, so I'm back. So Jen's early, so I don't hear the alarm go off, so that's probably a good thing. Oh yeah, it's got a few minutes left. Perfect. It's getting to be quite good these days at timing. It used to be that it always run over by about 20 minutes, and now we're actually back to a point that I'm coming back and the timer hasn't gone off, so that's good. So Chen's talking boundaries. So Fafi Fab said, I finally have boundaries. I think we could probably cheer that for you. My throat chakra had to open for that through Reiki. I share that. All of that, my daughter, fantastic. And I think that's the good thing, is that Reiki is a great way to basically connect to universal energy, to learn to move energy. And I think when we start listening to people, talking to people, we kind of start to realize that, you know, boundaries and the path, our spiritual path, are the two kind of key things that we don't really give too much conscious awareness to, but they really, really change our life. So I would say, Fafi, well done for doing that. It takes a lot of doing, and generally you look back and think, why didn't I do that when I was 20? Now I'm 50 odd, and I'm just starting to maintain boundaries and basically align myself with the things that I will and won't accept in my life. It should be obvious things that we do from childhood, but generally we don't really. I'm just going to say hi to Mary and Miriam. Good to have you guys on here. Hopefully you've enjoyed the Chen Chat. And I think that probably brings us to an end, unless there's any other questions, which I can't really see. Then we'll close this particular session. Ashley's here as well. Hi, Ashley. Good to have you. Good to have you on in the background at work. That's good. It's good that you can listen at work, to be fair, really. So again, we're talking about parental boundaries, just what I need to hear now. Gosh darn it. Well, that's good. They all say everything happens at the right time, Ashley. So if you're having to hear about parental boundaries, then it's probably not a bad thing, really. And I think with all, everyone that has parents, parents have had a different life to us. Haven't they? They've brought us up as their children, but it doesn't mean we have to align with their choices, their understandings, their belief systems, all the other things, really. We're our own individual sovereign personality from a spiritual perspective, and we have to learn on our own. And generally, for most of us, we look at what our parents did and we try and do something different. So most people look at the way we were parented and we see the kind of areas that didn't really work so well for us in the way that our parents brought us up. So then we try and change that for our children. And sometimes, of course, we go off in the wrong direction. Then when our children have parents, or children have children, and we're their parents, they're then looking to parent them in a different way than we parented them. So in theory, it's this kind of chop and change that's happening all the time, really. But again, I think it is just learning to try and do the right thing, really, for yourself. And I think one of Chen's teachings that I always remember, that I was always surprised at when he first said to me, is service to self first. And I'd always been brought up to think service to others first. And Chen says, no, service to self. When you're servicing yourself, you're in your sovereign power and energy, you have boundaries, you're in a sovereign space, then you can help other people. But service to others first means you never service yourself, you never work on yourself, you never clear the shadow aspects, you don't really vibrate at that higher frequency that we need to do. So service to others doesn't really work until we focus on ourselves first, really. And I think that's one of the core spiritual teachings that I've tried to align myself with in my kind of timeline from Chen, really. So hopefully that's helpful to someone that's listening to this at some point or in catch up. So with that, folks, we'll say good day. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll catch you again next week. For those that have just joined a bit later, we're going to kind of change the way we're doing things. So we're going to amalgamate the Chen Q&As, questions and answers, with this particular Chen podcast, and Jayne's going to start to join as well. So effectively, there'll be the three musketeers, myself, Jayne, and Chen on the next podcast, and we're going to bring them together so that we're not doing kind of two separate things. We're just doing one podcast that amalgamates Chen Chat and questions and answers. So if you have any questions and answers or questions for Chen, he'll provide the answers, of course. So just drop them into us on social media, Facebook, or you can send us an email, contact@andy-porter.co.uk. Jayne will put them up, pop them in a spreadsheet, and then in our next Q&A, we'll cover those questions. So we'll look forward to catching you all again next week. Okay, folks, bye-bye.